Jari nu you nadin skugig sa wijim la axia dahia gaslahau nat luayun sliwenda nat lawayam sladau ya ha ha ya ha ha ya ha ha ya ha ha Ajari nu you nadin skugig sa wijim la axia dahia gaslahau nat luayun sliwenda nat lawayam sladau
Natalia di Wayan is rewarded di Dayu Bakla di Ujagu. Di Wayu Gitxaała di Dayu Bakla di Ujagu.
Gitxaała has been continuously inhabited 10,000 years or more.
Gitxaała di Ulwatkan, Lax Klan, Gitxaała. Adas kudum lo am qoden da shegaun, Ul nada snoon, Ul qatlada Gitxaała. Gitxaała is us. Lax Klan is this home.
Cycle Goot, to be of one heart, kind of ties in with Bucklands to work together.
Years ago, when people were dying off rather rapidly, originally we lived along the coast. 200 miles of coastline is where our people were living. When the different diseases hit, they were getting wiped out, and the elders decided to call together those that were left. And the elder that told me about this said that they camped at Colonial for a period of time while the warriors went out to seek out a suitable place to live.
Clan, beautiful place. And the open place in the back door, about 5-minute run for a boat, and you're out in the open ocean. And Gitxaała Inlet that way. And this is where we all find our resources of our table. This is a table of our people. Food, anything.
Gitxaała was essentially from Alaska down to the top end of Aristobal Island to Moore Island. Throughout that territory, each of our clans have authority and jurisdiction over specific waterways and land bases. And it's through those territories that our Yauch and our Melks comes from. It signifies the authority that our people have. The significance of the history is interactions with supernatural beings, what we call noch. So our people didn't just happen amongst territory and say, oh, this is something that I might take to have as my own. But they were actually encounters with spiritual beings. And it's the spiritual beings that our culture is mirrored after. Those noch, or hagolo, as some people would call them, have a range of territory on their own. And they have authority and jurisdiction over waterways and land as well. When our people encountered these spiritual beings, we modeled and mirrored what it looks like for them. So the authority granted to us in terms of territories, songs, dances, crests, actually come from noch, spiritual beings. It wasn't something that just occurred or something that was just thought of by people to differentiate ourselves and to say this is who we are. It was actually bestowed on us by noch. Our requirements to not only respect but to protect nature and the environment, and not to take for granted what exists for us. There wasn't such a thing as money economy. What we had was a dependence on the resources. What we had was an understanding that we can survive. The Gitxaała are represented by 4 clans. We have the Kilowell, Gisbudwada, the Wolf Clan, Lachkebu. We have the Raven Clan, Genhada, and the Eagle Clan, Lachski. Each of these clans have hereditary chiefs. Each of these chiefs are responsible for the territory, whether it's land-based or water-based. Each of those chiefs are responsible for people that belong to them. And people that belong to them are matrilineal. We inherit our clans from our mother's side, not our father's side. So it's actually our uncles that would be our hereditary chiefs. And their responsibility really is to ensure the well-being of not just territory, but family.
John Lee Rye, a ski, deep day, a clown, the old juggy. Missy DYU, is but what a deep day, the clan, the old jugger. Christian DYU, is but what a deep day, the clan, the old jugger.
Well, I'm Jevin.
Carson DYU. Lasky Didayu, Lakan Didayu.
I'm Jevin Carson.
Nicole Didayu, Lasky Didayu, Lakan Didayu.
Well, I'm Jepson. Four tribes are very important to our culture. That's when they use the Ayauch. Ayauch is law. Adauch, the history and your stories about your clan and your territory. And Golgochians. Golgochians means when you pass down territories of the tribe that holds. And those are the only strong statements of our, so today they call it Constitution. And there's a lot of other protocols and roles that they have in our own Ayauch, Adauch, and Golgochians.
We talk about the structure of traditional governance, how on one level it's a very simple idea. You have matrilineal-based house groups that own property, names, prerogatives, etc. On the other hand, it's a very complex system. There's interlocking pieces of property. The house territories aren't necessarily just one piece, like homogeneous in one place. There's overlapping. And that requires interrelationships between house groups. So marriages were set up between different lineage groupings that were maintained through time. And actually the notion of, because these are social systems, not biological systems, so people made decisions about who was appropriate to be put into places. We were also talking about the way in which the hereditary leadership, the Samoyed or Simgiged or Legeged of particular houses, would use their knowledge of the traditional practices and the new systems. So when the Gamsiwa systems of legal authority came in, hereditary leadership would look at those and make decisions. And Gitxaała hereditary leadership, not just a kind of political and social and cultural authority, but an economic basis to their authority.
You had to have proper protocol, tribal lineage, who's next in line for what name. They had that all in their minds. They learned that. And they insisted that we learn it too and proceed in the right way, not just giving names out to whoever you felt. It had to be proper protocol. They were very strong in ancient culture and ancient customs. Boys grew up with their uncles, and they didn't leave until they got married to start their own families. So that was how the structure worked. Boys didn't stay home with their parents. They lived with their uncle, and that's where they learned the values of life and the methods of survival, of gathering food. They all learned it from their uncles.
One of the legacies of colonialism is that these notions of solidarity have been ripped apart. because there's so many different kind of countervailing pressures coming in, the intrusion of genocidal practices.
The world's changing. We're in the new millennium now, and with the world going so fast, a lot has been lost. There's still a lot being saved too. So we'll never get it all back. A lot is gone forever. Like ancient words in our language, words that we heard when we were young, they're gone. We're trying to strengthen it and rebuild it again, and make a foundation out of it.
How to look at colonization. How has that impacted us? How has that impacted women? And sometimes I think that my moving forward and continuing on in education, participating in hunting, which was seen as a man's job, participating in fishing, which was seen as a man's job, might be a form of resistance on my part.
We shared. We didn't. Back in the day, well, I don't think anybody owned, this is mine. I don't think I heard that. And that was their tradition is, when the table is set from the Gitxaała people, it's for everybody. Have feastings. When they say, "Tla bataskan," "Tla bataskan," "Tla gwalgalak," that's an invitation of everybody to come, to share what they harvest. Skan is a cedar bark. They laid it out for the guests to come.
Our territory is very rich in the sea resources. We got the halibut. And Gitxaała was known for a capital of the world on clams.
The clams, when I was little, that's how the Gitxaała people live in the winter time. Lots of clams. That's why they left here. In the olden days, they lived here first, Prince Rupert. But it's too hard. They look far away to get seafood.
We have spring salmon in our waters. There are some kids could catch fish on a dock, spring salmon. It happens in springtime when the herrings are around. And we have genties there, sea cucumbers.
I'll get out for harvesting clams or cockles in the winter months. In the spring, I make sure I'm back here to harvest seaweed. Right in the next few days, we'll be out salmon fishing.
Yes, yams and clams and cockles. But we only take what we can eat for the day, not to take too many. And it's only at certain times too, not all year round.
My dad went up on a mountain and got a mountain goat, and then they would shoot a bear, and the only time they shoot a bear to eat the meat is when they're eating berries, not the fish. So the meat don't taste good if you try to eat bear meat when they're eating fish.
What I'd love to do as a kid was harvesting our traditional foods. So the memory I have of my grandparents is that teaching me how to preserve our traditional foods. And the one thing that they had said to me was, it'll always work if you work as a family or a community. Do things together and it'll be a lot much easier.
We're careful when we go out, no matter how many things we see that we can possibly take home, we have to be careful and we have to be disciplined. Well, you know, I can have a feed of halibut today. You know, I don't have to go and catch red snapper, lingcod, or whatever. I'll just take the halibut home, or maybe one seal, or maybe one deer. But we don't destroy all around us unnecessarily. It's just what you need.
I remember we all go on a big boat before we pick seaweed, and we stop between White Rock and Gitxaała, and my grandmother and my mother, my auntie, start feeding the knock, put food in the water, and they're talking to knock. We're gonna go harvest our food. Like, it's just like a prayer, and they threw all the food, feeding the knock, so nothing will happen to us when we go around.
Our laws, our traditional laws, the relationship that we have with nature, and the breaking of laws, and what may occur when laws are broken. And the terminology that we use is hawex. It's difficult to interpret, but it relates to karmic experience, that if you were to harm nature or animals in nature, and specifically spiritual animals, there are a number of animals. It's important for our young people to know the spiritual connection that we have with the animals, and what would be some of the consequences that would occur if we were to harm or allow harm to occur to any of these animals. There are a number of laws that we need to abide by that allow us to maintain our social structure, not necessarily just in relation to a spiritual connection to nature, but our relationships to one another. Our culture is still fluid. It has to be fluid in order for us to maintain a structure of hierarchy, that structure of governance. And it needs to be witnessed and accepted by all present. But really at the heart of it, it belongs to the clan and it belongs to the house to make the determination as to who would be next in line to succeed for a position of lineage.
Aboriginal rights and title are actually Canadian law, not Indigenous law. So Gitxaała law is very different than Aboriginal rights and title, which is a Canadian thing. But that almost implies a kind of static practice, even though the practice can wax and wane. So the court decisions have said, okay, it can go up and down. Because the people who really need to do reconciliation are non-Indigenous people who need to reconcile themselves to the existence of Aboriginal rights and title.
I didn't really fully understand the cultural path, the ayao of what I was supposed to do, but they guided me and then presented me to the hereditary table. I understood it very clearly that you had to show your worth if you want to be a leader. That's where the saying comes, "Sigwe samoiget, dum samoiget." The literal translation in English is a chief makes himself very poor to be a chief. That's the literal translation. But the meaning of the Samailach, Sigwe samoiget, dum samoiget, is you humble yourself. You bring yourself right down, and then you become a chief.
We talk about instilling values, beliefs, morals, teachings to young people. One of the best ways that we can do it is to begin bestowing names amongst our young people so that they begin to develop an understanding of what's required to be a member of a clan, what's required to be a member of a house, what their responsibilities are, and who they're responsible to.
Keeping cultural practices living through actual use and practice. And so that's been a long history.
The only ones that tend to be acknowledged most are hereditary chiefs and matriarchs. But if we were to groom people and develop that understanding for our young people, what it truly means to be Gitxaała, we have to begin acknowledging them and to giving them a place within their own clan. Only when we speak with authority that we're able to set direction, that we're able to set a course.
Our drumming and dancing and singing means so much to me. I started with our drum and dance at a very, very young age. My G approached me. I was very young. I was only 11 years old at the time. And they approached me in the hall. They called me up. And my G has a book of all our songs. And they made it public. We're handing the songs over to Warren now to look after and continue to pass on to the next generation. And that meant a big deal to me, because that's what I grew up doing, singing and dancing. But I wasn't a leader back then. That's why I was fortunate that they took me under their wing, because I was going sidetracked in my life at a young age into drugs and alcohol. And my G didn't want that. So she took me into her house and gave me a name, Amagidam Nach. And that means good-hearted blackfish. And then she said, now that you're a part of my house, you cannot bring shame to your name or to me. You cannot dirty your blanket. That's what she told me. And I changed my ways after that, and she said, now you have roles and responsibility. You hold the songs. Now it's your turn to pass it on. So it's very, very strong within me when I drum and dance. I don't do it for myself. I do it for the kids and to pass it on. You say when you're born, that soft spot, all the positive and whatever you feed the baby goes in there. So whenever a child is born and the family calls me and I go to the hospital or wherever they are, and I pass on one of our songs to them, and I sing it to them until they fall asleep. And then I tell them our history of that song and where it comes from, who composed it, so it will never die off, because I believe that is so true. The kids are striving and they're hungry for our culture. And drum and dance plays a big part of it, because it tells our history of who we are, where we come from, and it shares that connection with the Noch on how we got that song and story and who it belongs to. Hana, 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 hey, hey, hana, 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 hana.
The one that I'm familiar with was a Gitxaała song.
It's going to go way back. It's one of our oldest songs. It's from the Ganhedas.
It's a spiritual song whereby a group of people lived in a certain area that were starving.
So two brothers went out on the canoe and they headed up towards the inlet. And they got to Chief Point. And then there was a Deben, a sea lion in the water. And these two brothers, the one in the back told the brother in front, Debeny, Debeny. So he got up on the canoe and then he speared that Deben, sea lion.
And when they harpooned the seal in that area, it wasn't the seal, it was the supernatural seal.
On those spearheads, you had the cedar rope tied to it, so you wouldn't lose it. When they speared it, that sea lion wouldn't die. And then it was towing them everywhere. So they decided to cut the rope from the canoe. And when they cut it, it reattached itself to the canoe. And then they kept cutting it, to the point where they couldn't reach the rope on the canoe anymore. So the sea lion kept towing them.
When they realized that they couldn't disconnect with that, they tried, and then they just relaxed in the boat until they got to their destination.
And then it was getting late and dark out, so the brothers just decided to lay down in the canoe. We didn't have blankets back then, so they had this cedar mat. They call it scun. So the brothers gathered under there. They pulled it over them, and they slept. They slept until they hit the beach. And this song is going back to the Noch Noch. That sea lion was a Noch Noch, and it towed them to the beach, and they ended up on the outside of the inlet. So when they got to the shore there, the Goni, Ploni, Deebini, Spoony, those were the food that were gathered on the beach, and there's plenty more. But I can't go back to remember them all. But the song goes back to Limi Ians. The brother was gathering the food, and the oldest told them to start a fire.
And they were building a fire, and they were putting shocks on there. You know what shocks means? It's those wood from the beach. Building a big fire. Big fire, and then they heard somebody singing. Shams Wells and Goot, and there were nobody's around.
This song is called Limi Ians. Is the brother heard a voice in the distance. Sa'am Welsum Goot, Sa'am Welsum Goot. So the brother followed that voice, and he had to crawl over a rock. And when he got over the rock, you know the Ians, they're on a rock. They're stuck to it. But when he got there, this Ians was up, and he was looking out towards the ocean, and he was singing this song, Sa'am Welsum Goot. And while this Ians was singing this song, the brother crawled back a bit, and he started grabbing seaweed to thank the Ians, the Noch Nochum Ians, for giving them this song. He rubbed the seaweed on the back to give thanks. While he was doing that, the Ians went back on the rock, and the brother went back by his other brother, and then he started singing this song.
Sha'am Welsum Goot, Nishkuni Qonil Kuntishim Goot.
Shams Welsum Goot.
And during the song, you're gonna hear us refer to feeding the fire. We're gonna be feeding the fire with a bit of the food to thank the Noch Noch for what he has given to them, the food that they need to feed our people. So that's why the song is called Noch Nochum Ians.
It really encouraged them and said, what you think is a log is actually a seal. You're cooking some food right now. And they didn't realize it. But when they heard this Noch Noch, this little supernatural being, singing the song, and then what you think is a log is a fur seal. What you think is a log is a sea lion, and on it goes. And then they realize, wow, we got a lot of food here. So when there's all cooked, they loaded the canoe, and the supernatural being towed them back.
So that's one of our songs we got from the Noch Noch. And it's a very, very sacred song. And it comes from Wilfred Jackson's house. Now, Sa'am Welsum Goot, Sa'am Welsum Goot.
I think the song could represent, like it would definitely represent who we are as a people, as Gitxaała. Like we said, the values, the respect, Tloms. Also a great sense of humility, uplifting to the spirits of our young people, that our ancestors cared enough for all of us. We're still here. We're very resilient. And this generation, my generation, to show them that we care enough to take the time. We want you to go forward in the future with the values of respect, carrying our culture, our language, the knowledge and the history of who we are as Gitxaała.
That everybody knows what tune you're going at.
Yeah. That's what I mean, yeah, to set the rhythm.
Yeah, set the rhythm.
How
Maybe even on the fourth time, then you go low. That we all know when we're going to go into the... Yeah.
Look, this is what I'll do. So you do Habrian first 2 times, and the second, last 2, that's when I come in. And right away, as soon as you end Neat Hound, as soon as that ends, you just jump into that. I think it's better to
mix
go
them
together. Eh?
Yeah, go together instead of just saying
Wait.
Hagoyan all the time.
Yeah.
Mix them all the time.
Yeah.
Hagoyan, Neat Hound, Hagoyan, Neat Hound.
Yeah.
And then you could do your hollering around.
Yeah, okay. You shake? You shake?
Yeah.
Make sure your hand is shaking. The boys will be opposite. They'll be
Yeah. Oh my God, you're getting me excited.
Why what?
Said Golam Goot is people of one heart. Said Golam Goot is the philosophy. But we're located in a community that speaks to accent. Lax Klan is derivative of Bachlans. Bachlans is the prerequisite for an accent to Said Golam Goot. And for myself, I'd like to see greater expression given to that unification and purpose to that unification. There was an understanding that all of the clans and all of the houses need to come together as one. And the term Bachlans and coming to Lax Klan was a great example of our ability to act as one people, to be one people. And not just to think like one people, but to take up an accent together. And that is the true origin of Lax Klan, is the ability to take an accent in unison.